Welcome to For Real I Do with Brittany Ellis, the unfiltered side of weddings. From planning truths to vendor insights to navigating design, culture, and family dynamics, this is for couples who crave clarity and vendors ready to elevate. Your insider pass with just a little oversharing. Hey everyone, welcome back to For Real I Do. Thank you so much for joining me each week to listen and learn more ways that you can just essentially plan your wedding better, right? So I really am here for you. And so one thing that we're going to talk about today is something that is really just near and dear to my heart, which is the real cost of hiring the wrong planner. So if you are a couple right now looking to plan your event and you're shopping for a vendor, maybe you're in the thick of planning with a vendor right now, to give a little bit of a reality check on that. Maybe you're a vendor and you're like, praise Lord, Brittany is talking about wedding planners and the cost of hiring the wrong one, because your vendor team certainly feels when you do as well, alongside yourself and your family. So I really just want to kind of dive into this topic because it is so important in an ever-growing and ever-changing industry, especially where like the barrier to entry is like zero. Like my neighbor tomorrow could wake up in the morning and say, I'm going to be a wedding planner today, right? There's a lot of weeds that couples need to kind of cruise through in terms of making effective decisions. So first thing I want to talk about is the price perception. So let's start with what couples often feel that full service wedding planning cost, right? So in today's market, you'll find that planners are charging anything from, Lord help them, like $10,000 to $50,000 to percentage of budgets, and sometimes more depending on scale of the event or just the geography of where they're located, or if they specialize in destination weddings or things to that end. But the truth really is that the range exists because the level of involvement and infrastructure behind those price points vary drastically. Okay. So when you hire a planner at a lower rate, you're often hiring a solo operation. Okay. So maybe it's one planner, or maybe it's, a new planner. Maybe she's seasoned, but she just doesn't have a team. And maybe there's an assistant who kind of jumps in part-time, but it's not like a full team. And that distinguishment really matters because in my going on 14 years of doing specifically Indian weddings, that's kind of my niche and my specialty. I have probably on average, I would say about 3 couples a year that I get a random phone call from. And again, I'm not involved with their planning. Maybe we had a consultation and maybe it didn't work out. That's definitely happened before. And they call me and they say, hey, we're about 2 months out from our wedding and we literally cannot get a hold of our wedding planner. And we're kind of in panic mode right now. And we're just looking to see what our options are to maybe hire someone last minute to just take this thing over. And obviously, like that's the last thing that anybody should have to deal with. And I don't know the other side of that, right? So I'm literally talking to these couples having no context. And I say, listen, talk to me about the different methods of how you try to reach her. Maybe she's on vacation, like what's going on? They're like, no, we have tried to DM her, text her, call her, email her. It's been several weeks. We see that she's posting on Instagram, but we can't get in touch with her. Again, this is a little bit of a nightmare situation. Certainly this doesn't happen to everyone just because you hired someone that was a little cheaper. But the reality is that they don't have a team, right? So there's only so many hours in a day, and they're trying to juggle probably at that price point, which we'll talk about, multiple projects. And so you're not going to get the communication that you're expecting. And so when you're hiring someone at a lower price point, I really think it's important that couples also somewhat drop their expectations on how much you're effectively going to be communicating with that person, how quickly you're going to hear back from that person. And that matters because in our office and, certainly in other wedding planners' office, they have full-time employees that are working on, project leads, creative operation, administrative support, and people who are effectively in the office every single day actively managing weddings, right? So it's not like if I'm out on a site visit all day with a couple, that the other clients that really do have deadlines and have things that need to keep moving are moving in the direction that they need to be moving. So yes, our price point and other planner price points are different because what we deliver is different. The communication is different. All those variables go into that. So let's talk about where the hours really go. I was on a run this morning. and this just like literally popped into my head. I've never actually charged hourly for my services because that bill would be astronomically ridiculous. But I do want to break this down because I want to give some context to couples out there that are currently maybe in the shopping phases or just in general. There's a lot of language right now in the market. And I have a lot of consultations that will come to me and say, oh, well, we kind of have budgeted this and this but for a planner. And I want to break that down because it's almost like, where did that number come from? Like, where did we come up with that fee? And one of the average fees as of late that has come up specifically in the Florida market has been $15,000 for a full service wedding planner for an Indian wedding for 3 events, Sangeet wedding and reception, over 2 days. I'm not even going to talk about guest count, right? Some of these clients are wanting someone to come in for 15 grand and they have 500 of their nearest and dearest. And so we'll get into that a little bit later, but let's break down the reality of planning hours, right? So if you took a full service or our service, let's just say, and you divided it hourly to see how much time actually goes into running a wedding effectively, vendor sourcing, communication, reviewing BEOs, timeline variations, vendor walkthroughs, briefings, and then, of course, on-site execution, then you're going to really kind of get a sense of what that looks like. But when somebody says to me, hey, listen, we're going to find our own venue and we're going to hire our own vendors. We really just need coordination, or maybe we need a hybrid or something to that end. Hiring your venue and your vendors is actually like not even a third of the work. The real planning happens after the contracts are signed. So in the follow through, in the pacing, in the alignment between, 20 plus vendors and 300 guests over several days. But let's talk about baselines, because I really do want couples who are listening to this podcast to feel educated when they're making their decisions so they can kind of have that aha moment to say, oh, okay, like I get it now. I understand how much it goes into this. So let's say that you've hired all of your vendors. And let's say on a minimum for the wedding day, you're going to have at least 10 of them. Okay. 10 being your designer, your DJ, who most likely might be handling your lighting and production and things of that end, your venue, your caterer, your photographer, your videographer, your hair and makeup. Maybe someone's coming to dress the ladies, right? And their saris, things of that end, your priest, and then maybe a horse or an elephant or a car, some sort of barat transportation, okay, baseline. So let's say with each of these vendors that your planner is going to spend at least 2 hours of communication before the wedding arrives. Again, that's baseline, because I could go into like many, many things that need to be discussed per vendor prior to actually arriving on site and it being effective. So baseline being, hey, what time are you arriving? What are you going to need when you get here? Hey, here's what time that the event starts. Here's what time I need you to be there. And, maybe just some additional details pertaining to their work and involvement. I won't get into the fact that just your barat transportation alone, if it's a horse, it's coming on a trailer and they don't have parking for it, then you actually have to like get into with the city and you have to permit and you have to slots for those. Cone that off. You have to hire off-duty police officers because it's a live animal unless it's on the actual resort property. Like there are so many little checklist items that if you're a seasoned planner, you understand what I mean. And so when I say 2 hours per vendor as far as communication before the wedding, like trust me when I say that's very baseline. Okay. So 10 vendors, excuse me, times 2 hours each is 20 hours of work. Okay, great. Let's keep cruising. Timeline development. So now that you have all the information, you've talked to all the vendors, you've collected all the details, now you can start actually like building out the framework of the timeline, right? The blueprint for the wedding weekend. What time everyone's arriving, what time they're leaving, what are the hair and makeup schedules? What time is everyone getting dressed? What is the song list? What are the details of the food and beverage for the guests? What is the banquet event order from the venue to make sure everybody has the right setup in the different events? I go into very specific details of BEOs and just like venue specifics with a previous episode with Jennifer Sharp. That episode alone, if you were in venue contracting phases and you don't listen to that episode, it's like literally free information. Go listen to that episode. But anyway, so timeline development, right? So the structure, the blueprint, all of the details, right? That big Excel spreadsheet, especially if you're hosting a multi-day event, minimum at least 25 hours of work is going to go into that, right? Organizing your vendors' contact information, the timeline, the inventory, anything that you've purchased that you want to place out, like little favors and things like that, like all that communication, let's just say baseline 25 hours. Okay. Then layouts, just the visual of your events. theater style seating, what size stage is it going to be for the month up or the ceremony, what is the reception going to be? Is it multiple rounds and things like that? Because just being really honest with you, most designers, they'll create a layout for you based on the framework of what they're providing. But unless they're a really top tier professional, they're most likely not going to think or care to think about what size table does the DJ need? And does he need 2 chairs there? And what size cake table do you need? And where's the food footprint going to go? They're really just worried about the inventory that they're bringing on site, if that makes sense. And it's no dog on them. It's just saying like, hey, at the end of the day, like they're only going to be worried about what they're doing. So let's say that you get a baseline layout from them. Your planner, if they're seasoned and know what they're doing, is at least going to take that baseline and they're going to make sure that every single vendor requirements are on that layout, right? So the DJ's got his table. Hey, by the way, the DJ needs like 60 amps of power. What power does the ballroom have, right? So making sure that we have the power needs associated on the diagrams. Like these are all kind of just like the layers of support that if people don't think about, you're going to trip power at your event or things aren't going to be set up on time and your doors are going to open late. So long story short, let's say that layout support 5 hours. And again, I'm being very generous with these hours. I'm literally rounding down. So 55 hours total baseline communication and framework development, 55 hours. Okay. On-site management for a Sangeet wedding and reception, even if you're doing a welcome party, let's swap it out. Okay. So the first event, whether it's a welcome party or a Sangeet, usually is about 4 to 5 hours in length, right? So for your planner, that's obviously they're going to come in early because they're overseeing like vendor load in, maybe your hair and makeup schedules, maybe things to that end. So let's just say that's a 10 to 12 hour day for that planner and her team. Okay. Which we'll talk about a little bit later. And then for wedding and reception, right? If you've been on site for an Indian wedding, then you know these things start very, very early. That is minimum a 15 to 17 hour day per staff member. So you're overseeing everything from like early hair and makeup schedules to, the designers literally setting up either overnight or early morning in the dark. Like you're making weather calls, like all those things, like you are on for that time. Okay. And let's say that you have roughly 300 attendees coming at your wedding. You're going to need at least 6 team members on site for an event that size, especially if it's a multi-day, multi-event function going on. 3 people completely designated with family, bride side, groom side, 3 people completely designated with production logistics. Your vendors need someone that they can rely on and call and say, hey, I need this table dropped. They're there to perform a task that you contracted them to do. They can only do that if they have the support of the venue and planning team to make sure that things are getting done appropriately. And then, of course, guest hospitality, right? People are being greeted and directed and they know where they're going because we all know, which my clients have quoted. My clients have been the one that came up with this language where they say IST, Indian Standard Time, which is so funny. But essentially, if you don't have like team members on site to just make sure people know where they're going and like sending the group text, right? I mean, ultimately, that's going to be a really big part of it. Okay. So Sangeet, minimum of 10 hours, right? 5 hours for the event. Let's just say another 2 from the strike and 3 from the front end. Again, I'm being super generous with these hours. And then wedding and reception alone is going to be like probably another 15. So long story short, let's just say it's 20 hours per team member over the course of those 2 days. Okay. So if you've got 6 team members, which would be the appropriate size staff for that amount of people, guess what, guys? If it's 500 people, it's more people. If it's 600 people, it's more people, right? 300 guests really is baseline. You should have 6 team members on site. Okay. That's 120 hours total for those 6 team members on site for those 2 days. So that planner that's charging you $15,000 for full service for 3 events over 2 days, 55 hours in like in all those months leading to the event date, 55 hours baseline of the investment that they're going to put in for communication and 120 hours on site. That's 175 hours total that they're dedicating to your project. That's $85 an hour. So here's why that rate is maybe enticing, but here's the reality of what you're going to get spending that amount or less on your planner. They are most likely taking excess events. Okay. And they may say, oh, we only take this many. Are you on their calendar? Do you know how many events that they're taking? Do you know if they're sending Joe Schmo over to this event and this event? No, you don't know that information, but I can tell you if they're only making $85 an hour and that's before expenses. That's before expenses, right? That's before they've actually like paid the team that showed up and like worked the event because Lord knows that they are not full-time team members. They are subcontractors that are showing up to that event. Maybe they're her best friend showing up and she's got the plan. Hey, you need to set out the favors. I mean, complex multi-day scaled events are so much more than that, y'all. It is not a one-woman operation show. And if you are investing, and I see you, because if you're investing, least standard price points right now are like, let's just say $1,500 per guest times 300 attendees, $450,000 or less. I don't care if you're even spending $200,000 on your wedding. If your expectation is for somebody that you paid less than $15,000 to come on and like manage that type of investment, I just think at the end of the day, you really got to look at the hours and look at the justification in the cost. Okay. So this is purely not to be a rant. It's purely just to share with clients that, or couples or whoever's out there that's trying to shop for their wedding planner right now. I felt like it was coming up so much, so I had to mention it. It's like, sure, yeah, it sounds good, but that's probably my neighbor next door that woke up yesterday and decided that she's going to be a wedding planner. I want to speak to planners who might be listening. If you're charging less than it costs to sustain your time, your overhead, and your future, you're either going to burn out or risk a wedding going wrong, and that will cost you your reputation. Because scaling with clarity means charging appropriately for the infrastructure it takes to deliver consistently. You can't sustain excellence on volume, only on systems. So you've probably heard the saying, buy it cheap, buy it twice. So quick little story. I recently hired a company to deep clean my white linen sofa. Like anyone, I did my research. I checked reviews. I got quotes. I checked them out, right? Okay. And phoned a friend. And I chose the one that seemed to be, I felt, the most reasonably priced. So they came, they did the job, and they left. But once I looked closer, because I'm running around doing a million things that day. Once I looked closer, nothing had really actually changed. Like that dirt stain that was like from my son was still on the sofa. And I'm like, shouldn't that have come up? I don't know. So I called him and they're like, oh, sorry, we did the best we could. Awesome. Okay, great. So then I went on the phone again and to the other person that I had shopped. And I just was like, all right, I'll just go with the higher quote this time because maybe I'll get like a better result. I don't know. The reviews seem good. I sent them pictures of like the fact that this didn't come up. Is this something that's just wrong? They're like, no, we can take care of it. Literally night and day difference, right? So it cost me twice as much in the end to get the result that I wanted. But what I'm trying to get at is your wedding is no different, right? Except you don't get a redo. You get one day. So when you hire the wrong planner, you'll feel it. I promise you're going to feel it. You're going to feel it in the disorganization, the last minute questions, or worse, in what happens on site. Cold food, delayed setup, missed cues, all because things weren't aligned behind the scenes. They just weren't experienced enough, y'all. You can't buy it twice when it comes to your wedding. You have to buy it right the first time. And so I'm really encouraging couples out there that please do not choose your vendors on price tag alone because experience really does matter in this industry. So what you should consider when you're choosing your planner is remember that we're the first vendor you hire, right? So that means that you're setting the tone with this hire for the entire process. And sticker shock is real. I get it, right? I get it. But there are dozens of things that you can adjust later. So, for example, talking about priorities, that photo booth that you've been eyeing, or that caricature artist that you think is just going to be so much fun at the cocktail hour, or those handwritten calligraphied invitations, right? Fabulous. Love them. Not dinging on them. But none of those details will really matter if the experience falls apart logistically. So the ROI of your planning team is peace of mind. And that's the part that you can't like quantify until you've seen what it looks like when it's missing. Because unfortunately, until you get to the wedding day, because a planner's not selling you something tangible, they're selling you their time, their energy, their expertise. You're just you're not going to really get a sense of that full ROI until it's wedding day, right? And then you're going to know if you made the right decision or not. And God help you. I hope that you did. And I hope this episode is supportive to break that down. I actually would strongly be almost like asking that planner, how many hours do you usually invest? Like, how many phone calls are we going to get? Because if it's just like unlimited, 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 I mean, gosh, they're I can promise you they're making less than $85 an hour. To the couples listening, invest where it counts truly, and to the planners, charge what it takes to sustain your craft, because weddings are not rehearsals, they're once in a lifetime. Precision planning, cultural understanding, and flawless execution are the pillars and foundation within this company. And that is a cadence that we hold, because luxury isn't loud, it's earned through presence. I hope this episode was really supportive for you today and gave you some sense of clarity and direction. I strongly encourage you to share it with any newly engaged couples or any planners out there, quite frankly, that are offering you a service that it seems too good to be true, y'all, because it most likely is. So if this episode gave you any sense of direction, I highly encourage you to subscribe. We try to keep conversations as real as possible here on this platform. So I hope that this was helpful for you.